The gentleman from Hanover, Mr. Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance Advocacy Day. Representatives of the Alliance will be visiting your offices to share their perspectives on the current state of crisis and prevention services in Virginia. Unfortunately, as you may know, for those on the front lines, the news is not good. We live in an age where the incidents of intimate partner homicide are on the rise, and hundreds of thousands of Virginians are violated, often by those closest to them. But there is a solution to this problem. We have House Bill 1, which will work to relieve administrative burdens on local centers that live grant to grant and provide important crisis services to those in need. With streamlining and structural efficiencies proposed, local prevention professionals can focus on their mission. With companion budget actions, new resources would work to sustain these critical services. Now, some of you less familiar with sexual and domestic violence services may ask why changing the status quo and additional resources are so important. Sexual assault and domestic violence crisis centers are struggling with shrinking funds and a growing demand for their services, such as shelters or 24-hour hotlines. Right now, nearly half of Virginia's 57 crisis centers can no longer afford to manage these services. With no sexual assault victim services on the Eastern Shore, a closing of a center in Front Royal, and only limited access in Southside Virginia, lives are in jeopardy statewide when these services are at risk. The number of Virginians turned away because shelters were full has more than doubled in the last 4 years, from about 1,500 to almost 3,600 in 2012. And the odds that a shelter bed will be available to a family in crisis is now about 1 in 3. No access to a bed for a family in crisis. Does that sound familiar? These impacts are real. An average of 540 adults and kids stay in a shelter on any given day. As we have seen in the area of mental health, this year this body finds itself having to react to yet another tragedy. To answer the why change, why now question, simply put, we can't afford to maintain the status quo. I encourage the body and thank those of you who have stood up to pass reforms this session to act now and support a healthy system of services for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. Thank you for standing up for the countless individuals and families in crisis, many of whom are not known to us. But together we can save lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.